I need you to stop coming out here. This is not your birthright. Your birthright is for you to be a queen. He starts saying all this other stuff, but I tune out at that point because I'm like, wow, he's really going to hurt me. He's like, get undressed. And I'm like, oh my God, he's going to rape me too. He's like, get undressed. I'm going to leave your clothes at the end of the street, count backwards from 90, and don't come back out here.
Hello and welcome to the Evolving with Jessica podcast. My name is Jessica. I am an integrative nutrition health coach, a holistic skin healing guide, and certified life coach. In this podcast, we cover topics such as holistic health and wellness, nutrition, and spirituality. If you enjoy or gain any insight, please leave a review. This makes the show more searchable, which helps others find the information too. In this episode, I am joined by Sharice Tareva. Sharice is a rebirth initiator, and that is a term that she trademarked that encompasses the work that she does. She is an empowerment coach, a trauma mama, and an emotional doula. Sharice is on a mission to empower other women to transmute their trauma into triumph and to journey back to their truest, most authentic self. Born into 3 generations of trauma and forced into human sex trafficking when she was 19, Sharice had to learn to not only heal within family, but within herself. This is a unique conversation on the podcast. While Sharice is a coach, her life experiences have been different than most people that you find in the coaching space. What you're about to listen to comes with a trigger warning. Sharice shares her story very openly, and in her story, you'll hear her talk about sex, rape, a shooting, among other topics that could be triggers. So if any of this is a trigger for you, or if any children are within hearing distance, I advise skipping this episode for now. Otherwise, it is a very empowering story. I am grateful to have this platform so that others who are overcoming a dark past themselves can hear Sharice's story and know that there is light on the other side. And if you're here because you're struggling with your skin, send me a DM with the words clear skin, and I will send you over a free resource that will help you on your skin healing journey. Without further ado, please enjoy this conversation with Sharice Tareva. Okay, so there's some heavy stuff that I want to get into with you, but we'll do that later on. I want to start a little bit lighter. I saw that you were talking about numerology. Yeah, I was like, okay, so is that based off of when you were born? I have like a favorite number, like a lucky number, but I don't know if that means anything, or would that number hold any significant meaning, or how do you actually, what is numerology?
Okay, absolutely. So, funny story. I had a favorite number growing up too. It was always 7. And I thought it was because the temple that I grew up in when I was younger, I was going to the Moorish Science Temple of America, and it was called Temple 7. And the book that we read, the Quran, had a 7 on it. So I thought subconsciously like that's where it had to come from. But no, my life lesson is a 7. It's a karmic 7. And my soul is a 7. So what's your favorite number?
Oh, okay. 4.
4? Okay, what's your birthday?
4/4.
Are you kidding me?
No.
Okay. Do you mind sharing the year you were born to so I could give you your life lesson number?
1990.
Okay, so 8, 9. Ooh, girl, you're a 9. Okay.
Yes, that sounds right.
Yeah, you're a 9, but let me make sure if it's a regular 9 or a karmic 9, boo. Nah, it's a solid 9. Okay, who girl? And your favorite number is 4?
4. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so somewhere in your chart, I mean, the double 4 for your birthday itself would make sense. But maybe there's a 4 somewhere else in your chart. Like maybe your soul is a 4, or maybe your primary life achievement is a 4, but numerology is literally the study of numbers. So people get like, they're like, oh, it's woo woo. And it's like, no, bitch, that shit is real. It is real. I mean, down to some of the trauma I experienced in my numerology chart, everything made sense. I remember going to go get my numerology chart done. And when I walked in, the lady was laughing and I was like, what's so funny? And she was like, your first 3, your top 3 numbers are the top 3 numbers that my husband has. And you both had this like bubbly energy to you. And I was like, she can't see that from 3 numbers. And when I sat down and she started doing my chart, like reading it to me, I bust out crying because she, I mean, read me like a book. She was like, your life lesson number is a karmic 7. And anything you do to fill yourself up from the outside in is not going to work. You keep buying stuff, you keep having sex. And she just, I mean, she punched me in my chest and I was sobbing. And she's like, what's wrong? And I was like, I just went to the mall, spent like $4,000 and I feel empty still. So when she said it, it made perfect sense. Like everything started to click for me. Even the trafficking that I went through, like the karmic 7, anything outside of me is not going to fulfill me. I'm only going to be fulfilled from God's source and then pour my medicine out. My primary life achievement number is a 4/22. It's a master number, which means that I came to do something that is going to impact a lot of people, and I have to build it from the ground up. And I think I'm living in that pretty loudly.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I love that.
Yeah.
And just to go back to people who think it's woo-woo, numbers and numerology have been around since before language. I
Exactly.
mean, they're carved into the side of like ancient buildings or the pyramids and things like that. So yeah, we can't just bypass it like it's nothing. You just casually threw in trafficking. So
Because I've worked through it so much that it's not as heavy as it used to be. And I have to remember that for everybody else, like that is not their experience. Yeah.
That's inspiring though, that you are in that place that you can speak about it like that. Because I feel like other people that kind of could give them the sense of like, oh, like I could get there. You know, like they don't have to live in like these bad feelings about it. Okay, so I do want to get into that.
Okay, we will.
Yeah. Since we've already brought it up, how did that happen and how old were you? And whatever you're willing to share, really.
Yeah. I feel like the more that I share my story, the more that comes through. So I was 19 when it initially happened, and it was a grooming process. So I was going through some shit at home. I didn't like my mom's baby dad. So I got on a bus to go hang out with my dad in the city. And on this bus, I met this young man and he was charming and all the things. And he told me that he wanted to take me out and wine and dine me in Atlantic City. And I was like, wow, I'm really having all of these problems at home. Like, I just want to get away from where I'm at right now. So I agreed. Long story short about that whole part, he pretended to be my boyfriend. So he wined and dined me for like a week or 2. He was a drug dealer in Atlantic City. And the friend that he hung out with that he called his brother was already a pimp. And he had said how pretty I was and how, how he thought that I would make him a lot of money. And I remember their conversation initially and the boy being like, yeah, no, she's a good girl. I'm not doing that. And then it escalating and him pretty much giving me an ultimatum, being like, hey, if you don't do this, like, I know where you live. I know your mom. I'll kill your mom and your sister.
The brother or the man that you were with?
The man, the young man that I was in a relationship with, because that's how it started. He was my boyfriend.
So do you think it was planned from the very beginning?
I don't know. I don't put anything past anybody. I think that the thought was there, and that when he let me hear that conversation, that was part of the grooming process for him to be like, oh, she trusts me if she hears me say this type of thing. But yeah, it was a whole grooming process. I mean, there were like bits and pieces that I look back at now and I'm like, wow, that was part of the grooming. Wow, when he said that was part of the grooming. Wow. But yeah, he pretty much gave me an ultimatum. And I think people's question is like, how did you let something like that happen to yourself? Or why didn't you call the cops? And it's like, I've always been this sassy. So the initial day that, not the initial day, maybe the second day that he asked me, we fought. Like we had a fist fight and he beat my ass. And he left me in the room and told me to think about my decision. And then when he came back, we fought for 3 days straight because I didn't want to do it. And then eventually I just gave up because I was tired of getting my ass beat. And then I started smoking and drinking just to be numb to the whole situation. And I really wasn't out there as long as everybody thinks, like in my family. I got out there when I was 19, but it was like the fall of my 19, so I was almost 20. And by time I was 21, I had already been out of it. I had found a way to like completely get out, or I didn't find a way. Spirit created a way. I don't know if you want me to go into that story, how I got out of it, but it's very,
I think everyone listening probably does.
it's very spiritual, man. So, like I said, I had gotten to the point where I had to smoke and drink to just do this trafficking and sleep with these random ass men to make him money. So this was like right before I got smart about it. I would go into the casinos and play the penny slots, Cleopatra. I would play this one slot and she would win me the amount of money that I was supposed to turn into him every single day. So on my way to the casino to get, play the penny slot, I was trying to buy some weed from this guy. And I swear to this day, this guy is an earth angel. And again, people argue with me. They're like, but what he did to you? And I'm like, you guys got to understand, my life lesson number is a 7. I only learn through experiences, and most of my experiences are difficult. That is part of my karma with the 7. So I'm talking to this guy and I'm like, I need to buy weed, but I can't be seen with you because you're a brown man. So these men groomed me enough that I couldn't talk to brown men. I could only talk to Caucasian men or Puerto Rican or Mexican, anybody that didn't look like me pretty much. Because if somebody that looked like me talked to me, they were probably going to snatch me up and talk some sense into me or get into an altercation with them or try to steal me from them. So I'm talking to this guy and we're walking and he's like, we have to walk off the track. And I'm like, ugh, I can't walk with you off of there. I'll get in trouble. He's like, real quick, there's a blue house we need to go to. The weed is there. And I'm like, fine. So we're walking and he's prophesizing to me. We're talking about spirits, angels. And I'm like, this is odd. I've never heard a drug dealer talk about God and like, what the fuck is going on? Like, I just want my weed. I need to hurry up and get my weed. And he's like, it's your birthright to be a queen and you're not supposed to be out here. And I'm like, I appreciate you, but I need to get high. Like, cause I don't know if I'm going to win this money on the slot machine or if I'm going to need to do what I need to do to get the money to him so he doesn't fuck me up tonight. So he's like, just behind this house. So I go behind the house and there's nothing there. And he puts a blade to my neck and he goes, listen. And I go, fuck, now he's going to kill me. He goes, listen to me. He goes, if you keep coming out here, you're going to die. I need you not to come out here. Please listen to me. I have goosebumps over my whole body every time. And I'm like, okay, whatever you need. I don't have any money. I have $5. I have my phone. He's like, I don't give a fuck about that. I need you to stop coming out here. This is not your birthright. Your birthright is for you to be a queen. He starts saying all this other stuff, but I tune out at that point because I'm like, wow, he's really going to hurt me. He's like, get undressed. And I'm like, oh my God, he's going to rape me too. He's like, get undressed. I'm going to leave your clothes at the end of the street, count backwards from 90 and don't come back out here. So I get undressed, hand him my clothes, and I count to like 15. I didn't count backwards from 90. I counted to 15. When I turn around, he's not there. And my clothes are folded perfectly at the end of the end of the alleyway that I was in. And I was like, okay, well, how did he do that quick? And when I recant the story, everybody's like, well, you were high. And I was like, I was trying to get high. I wasn't high yet. I was really trying to get high. So I put my clothes back on. I go find my pimp or my boyfriend, whatever you want to call him. And I tell him what happened and he doesn't believe me. He's
Okay,
like,
wait, I have questions first.
okay.
Okay, going back to the Cleopatra. So you play the slot machine and it would spit out the exact money you're supposed to give to the guy.
Yep, 325.
So you like, it's not like that just happened for you. It's not like that was planned or. that was just like a gift that
I feel like he would give me like $5 to $20 to start the night off.
Mhm.
And I would go in and I would spend like $5 on weed. I would spend like a couple dollars on Shirley Temples. And I was, I was illegal. I wasn't supposed to be in the casino. Let's
Mhm.
remember that, because I wasn't 21 yet. The
Mhm.
lady that would come and bring me drinks, she would make sure that nobody would mess with me. It was like she was an angel. The machine was an angel. I would sit at one machine and I would play. And I mean, like clockwork, it would give me $3.25.
So
But
you
it was
never actually needed to go sleep with somebody.
eventually, initially I did. Initially, I slept with quite a few people.
Mhm.
Quite a few people. But then I figured, I was like, oh, my dad plays the penny slots. Let me go in here and like hang out. And I think it happened by accident. I think it was like raining one night and I just went into the casino to kind of like hang out, and I saw it and she was like, Cleopatra, come play with me. And I was like, oh, okay, sure.
Wow. So
Yeah.
then it started giving you the money, and so then you didn't need to sleep with the people, and
Yeah.
then you had this encounter with this angel man.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then he folded your clothes, and then I think that's where I interrupted you.
Yeah, he folded my clothes, and I went back and I told the guy who was pimping me out, and he didn't believe me. He was like, you're lying. And I was like, nah, you gotta understand. He said, if I keep coming out here, I'm gonna die. I don't wanna come out here. I don't wanna die. I wanna live. And he was like, I don't care what he said. And I was like, he stole my phone. He stole my $5. And he was like, well, that's on you. And I was like, I got to tell my mom my phone is stolen because it was in her name. It was like there were all these things. And it's crazy. I remember telling my dad like that this man had robbed me, but I had to give him a different story. So I had to tell my dad that I was in the casino and somebody robbed me. And my dad goes, cool, ask them to run the cameras back in the casino. And I was like, fuck, I didn't think about that. And I remember being in the car, I was in the back seat, and the guy that was pimping me was actually in the front seat with my dad. So when I say the grooming process, he didn't just groom me, like he was around my family. Yeah, he was around my family.
My body.
Yeah. So he's sitting in the front seat with my dad, and my dad looks in the rear view mirror and he goes, listen, you got to call your mom and you got to tell your mom that about the phone. He goes, I don't know what you guys are up to, but whatever you're doing, whether you're dancing, whether you're being a prostitute, whether you're working down there, whether you're selling drugs, just make sure you're doing the best that you could do. And I looked at him and I was like, he could see it when he said prostitute, that it like stabbed me. And I was like, why would he say that? And then he was like, all right, I'll see y'all later, and got out the car. And I was like, what the fuck was that? I felt like my dad knew and he was trying to pull it out of me. But how do you ask your daughter, like, are you tricking in Atlantic City? And if you are, what the fuck are you doing? Like, how do you have that conversation? So there's more. There's more. We went back out there. I didn't have a phone. I had like a little flip phone, like a replacement phone. And back then I had a sidekick. Like, I love the sidekicks. Do you remember them?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my jam. So that's what he stole. So now I had this little flip phone, and we had went back out there like a couple days later, and I went straight to the casino. I was like, I'm not deviating. I'm going straight to the casino because I can't die in the casino because they have cameras in the casino. So I go to the casino. I win like maybe, I think a couple hundred more than I needed to give him. So I'm ready to go. I'm calling his phone back to back to back. He's not answering. Again, remember, I've always been this sassy. I wasn't like, oh my God, can we please leave? I call him and I'm like, where the fuck are you at? I'm ready to fucking go. Like, and I walk up to Dr. Martin Luther King Boulevard and he's sitting in the car. So I'm like waving the phone at him, and I walk up to the car, and his brother gets out the front seat and he's like, Reese, run. And I'm like, run? I'm like, I'm ready to fucking go. I'm not running. Like, it's 4:00 in the morning. Let's go. And the guy gets out, doesn't say anything to me, and he runs past me. When I turn back around, there was a guy that was trying to rob them. He was already out the car and he had a gun in my face. So I turned and I ran, and I remember running for like 3 or 4 steps and then being in the corner store across the street. So when I got in the store, I was like, this sucks. I was like, this man was shooting at, because he was shooting at us. I was like, I'm dead and heaven looks like a corner store. Like, I was like, this is what I lived for. And I'm having this moment where I'm like, no, really, like I'm dead. I'm touching myself like, well, where did I get shot? Because he was shooting at me. I was the last one to run. Where did I get shot? And the brother walks in the store. And I was like, and he looked at me like that too. We had this moment where we were both like, what the fuck? And he was like, Reese? And I was like, yeah. And then I was like, where's Manny? And he was like, I don't know. Are you okay? And I was like, I'm all right. And Manny came in and he had 4, your favorite number is 4 bullet holes with no exit wound. So the bullets were ricocheting in his intestines and tearing his intestines into shreds.
Oh my
And
God.
he died. He came back to life. He died. He came back to life. I mean, this went on for like 5 minutes while I called the ambulance. And it was like, that in itself was traumatic. But that's how I got out. Because then he couldn't force me to go down there anymore. The brother tried to, and I was like, those bullets were for me. He's like, no, they weren't. And I'm like, but they were. He only ate them because God doesn't play about me. When people do fucked up shit to me, karma comes back to them in the most fucked up ways. I don't ever wish that on somebody. That was never my wish for him to be hurt or harmed in that way. But when you fucking with an angel, you gotta be mindful what you do to me. So that is how I got out. That's not how I got away from him, because with somebody like that abusive mentality and that, no, I mean, there's so many things I could categorize him as. It took another year for me to get away from him. Yeah.
Wow.
I even moved into my own apartment. He followed me with like a Rottweiler so he could still control me in some way, shape, or form, because after he got shot like that, he was weak. So the abuse still happened. He still beat me up. We still fought. But at that point, it was like I was giving it to him because he had that type of injury.
Wait, so Manny, the one that had the 4 bullet, like he died, but he didn't actually die?
No, so he like flatlined like 4 times and
But
came
he
back
ended
to
up
life.
living.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, so that's
And
why he, for another year.
mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, I eventually, the way we separated, and this is the condensed version, but I started selling water filters in the city of Camden. I had bumped into this man that had already had a business, and he was like, wow, you're beautiful. You know how to speak. People would love to talk to you. And I was like, yeah, just teach me whatever I have to do, just teach me. And I had already had that mindset from being trafficked, that time is money. So I went into this business and I killed it because I just took that mentality and applied it to something different. I mean, I was going to people's houses, going under their sinks, cutting cutting piping and putting CPVC piping in a dress with my younger sibling. Like, it was a whole vibe. But I built that business up myself with this older man, and I started to make really good money. I didn't want to smoke anymore. I didn't want to drink anymore. And this man had come and lived in my apartment and didn't want to do anything and kept asking me for like money to smoke. So I stopped smoking so he couldn't smoke. And then eventually I stopped paying the cable bill, and then I stopped paying the electric. And then, excuse me, I stopped paying the rent so we could get evicted. I was like, well, if we get evicted, he can't come live where I live. Like, my mom won't let him there, or my dad won't let him there. And that was like my master plan. And it worked. It ended traumatically, but it worked. It definitely worked. He made me miss a deal with the Board of Education with the water filters, where I would have made residual income like $50,000 a year. And my first big chunk, me and my partner would have split 150,000. So like at 21, like that was life-changing money for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that was like a week before my 21st birthday. So when he got wind of that, I mean, there's a whole story to that too. I don't know if you want me to go there, but like that's a whole other thing.
Wow. Okay. So you got out of the entire trafficking situation
Yeah, because he got caught.
by selling water filters and just becoming very intentional about, okay, I'm going to get out of this living situation because he can't follow me to my parents' house. Wow.
Mhm.
Okay. So I want to talk about, because obviously you're spiritual, you had a lot of different spiritual encounters during all of that.
Mhm.
And I'm obviously, if you're listening to this, you probably know already, I'm a very big spiritual person as well. I believe in angels, and I definitely have had my own experiences throughout my life that have proven them to be true. So I want to know, like, were you already spiritual, or like how did you believe that these things, were you just like, there's no way this is a coincidence?
I feel like that is where I really started to have these encounters for the first time, or that I had an awareness that that's what they were. So even in the moment, I didn't think that that was an earth angel. I was like, this guy is crazy, until I got into the store and I was like, something's off. I thought that I was going crazy. You know, when you first have an awakening, you're like, it's me, it's not anybody else. I need to check myself into the mental institute. So I was on that shit. But looking back at it, I can be like, oh, that's an earth angel. He carried me into the store. There's no way I made it in the store before them. I had pumps on. The night before my big deal with the Board of Education that I wound up missing, I heard change your PIN to your card. And that was the first time I started to listen to that voice that I was hearing. I have goosebumps again. And I changed it. And I felt like to this day that it was my great grandma. There was an instance where my younger sibling was at the apartment where I was at, and my younger sibling was like almost two, and they grabbed my face and they were like, go home, Reese, and their face like shape shifted. And I was like, damn, I didn't smoke today either. So these things were happening, but I was always questioning because I was getting high. I was smoking weed. So I was like, that wasn't that. I was smoking weed. But anytime one of these like spiritual moments happened, I wasn't high. I was sober. So looking back, maybe a couple years after being trafficked, I was able to be like, oh, that was an earth angel. It didn't take me very long, because it kind of, I felt like that was my awakening. The man robbing me was my awakening. And then me ending up in massage school, and then finally ending up back in Atlantic City working at the best casino down there, I was able to have the funds to start to do all this like quirky shit that I was into that nobody was into yet, like going to sound bowl healings and meditation classes and book clubs. So that is where I made my connection, like, oh shit, like that man was an angel. I'm supposed to be here. Like I started going through these moments of enlightenment and like real self-actualization of my life has a meaning, and there's a reason that I didn't die that night and that I wasn't shot that night, and I really need to take heed to that. So yeah, I think that was my awakening.
Oh, that's so beautiful. So you went through a lot to find out that your life has meaning. How did you find your purpose, and how can other people find their purpose?
Girl, that's a heavy question. I like it. um I get asked that question from other people, actually, like, why am I here? What am I supposed to be doing, Sharice? Can you help me figure that out? And I don't think one person can tell you that. I think that multiple people can guide you there, because that's how I got there. So that's why I'm very clear, like one spiritual mentor or one psychic, I've been through them all. I've been to all ends of spirituality and the modalities. And I think it was a collective of being around the young lady who did my numerology chart, going to sound bowl healings, clearing out generational trauma, really tapping into my subconscious mind and rewiring that, and realizing like why I came here, and really studying my chart and being like, okay, cool. My life achievement number is a 4/22. What does that actually mean? Because that could mean a bunch of different things for a bunch of different people. But it became very clear to me that my trauma with the trafficking itself, because there's loads of trauma that I have, that just happens to be like one of the catalytic and bigger traumas, that wasn't going to be in vain, and that happened for a reason for me. So I know that there are other women who have been through sexual trauma as well, and that felt the same hate and shame that I did for my body. So in transmuting that, I knew that I couldn't be quiet about it. Like, my family hates when I talk about it. They don't want to hear it. They don't understand why I share it. It makes them uncomfortable, and I understand that. And I also understand that I have a mission, and I don't care that it sounds mean, but my mission is so much bigger than their feelings.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of trauma that I know about too that made me uncomfortable. And like, this is just it's like, there's a story in the Quran that I used to read, and it's like, Jesus is in our book, right? So people get confused because it's Islamism, but Jesus was in our book, and there's this point where he leaves his family and they can't find him, and the parents come looking for him, and they're like, Jesus, why would you leave us? Like, what are you doing? We care for you, and why are you telling these people all these things, and why are you speaking like that? We don't like how you're speaking. And Jesus presses their hand like, this is my work. Like, Father, this is my work. So you got to leave me alone because I'm doing my work. And that's how I feel. I feel like, and not saying that I'm comparing myself to Jesus, but that's the story that I'm hearing in my head when they get uncomfortable. Like, this is my work. This is what I came to do. I understand your feelings are valid, and just don't listen to it, because this is my boundary. Don't be on my social media. Don't listen to this podcast or anything like that. You know, I'm not going to not share my story. I was stifled and made small for so long, and my voice wasn't allowed to be shared, that you can't do that to me. This throat chakra is bust the fuck open. Like,
yes. And okay, you just mentioned having the guilt and the shame in your body, which is unimaginable. I'm sure for most of the people listening, after going through something like that. So how do you even go about letting go of that?
That took years to even start the process to realize that I felt that way, right? Because as a society, we're not taught to deal with our emotions. We're taught to keep going. There's this thing where it's like, oh, that happened, just push through. Oh, that happened, just keep going. So when I had got out of it and I like moved to my dad's, I like started dating somebody right away. And it was like, just let me get over it. Like, let me get under somebody to get over it, type of thing, which perpetuated the trauma even further. It took me years to realize that I even felt that way about myself. But the things that I was going through and the men that I were dating they were being a mirror for me to let me know that I felt like that about myself. Doing all the healing that I did, the sound bowls, the numerology, the meditation, going to massage school, later going back to be a certified health coach, like doing all these things is what really brought me to an awareness, like, hey, something's off, and I'm not exactly sure what it is, but something is off. So I eventually went to therapy, and therapy for me, I'm an advocate for it, but my first couple therapists, they didn't do it for me. Like, the talk therapy, it was not helping. It was actually re-traumatizing me. I feel like my really big breakthrough came from the subconscious work. I had went to a psyche weekend. It was 8/11. I can't remember the year, but I always remember the date. It was 8/11. And I went to this workshop, and there's this thing where I'm usually the youngest in the room, and I'm the only person that looks like me when I was going to these healing modalities. And there was a girl that was my age, but she was like irking me, and she was just being a mirror for me. Everything about her that was like triggering me was alive in me, and I just didn't want to look at it. And she was just so open and vulnerable about it. She was like, I hate myself. And I was like, oh, why does she hate herself? She's beautiful. And she was like, I'm just ashamed in my body. And I was like, oh, and it was like she was punching me every time she said something. And eventually we got to a balance. So what this is it's balancing the left and right hemisphere of the brain. And it's going back and rewiring either an experience or a thought process, or there are advanced balances. It's like so many layers to it. But we had got to a point where we were doing these basic balances and I wasn't responding to them. So the person that was running the class, she was like, come here, lay down. I'm gonna do an advanced balance on you. And I was like, okay. I was like, whatever. I really wasn't into it. I was like, this is not working. And she did this advanced balance, and it's called the life bonding balance. she walked me through it, and everything, like, it was like one of those moments where you're like, oh shit. She walked me through like being in my mom's womb, right? And listening to conversations and actually seeing what it looked like in my mom's womb. And in my mom's womb, my mom had, and trigger warning before I say this, my mom had been molested by somebody that lived with her. I'll just say that. And I could see like the scars, like I could see all the pain in her womb while I was in this visualization and in this balance. And it was like something
She was
clicked.
molested while she was pregnant with you?
No, she was molested when she was a teenager, when she was 16.
Okay, so
Mhm.
before you were,
Wait,
okay.
yeah, way before. But I'm in this visualization, in this process, I'm in her womb, and I could see like the scarring and like the pain. And it was like, oh shit, no wonder I went through what I went through. And it was like a light bulb went off for me. And in this process also, you're born and you die in this balance that I did. And it literally just like broke my heart open, and I was able to be like, I'm ashamed of my body. I feel guilty. And now I know why I was trafficked, because I can draw it back. And not that I was supposed to be trafficked, right? I'm not saying it in that way, but I can go back to the generations. My mom was conceived by being molested by my grandpa. That's how she was conceived. They had a shotgun wedding. My grandmom's father found out, told him that he had to marry her. So then my mom was molested, right? And there's all this sexual trauma, and it's like, how could I not go through something like that if nobody stopped that, if nobody went back to do the work? So I feel like that's why I'm so committed. And that instance and that subconscious workshop is what ignited me to be like, whoa, this is alive. Like, I got to deal with this. This is a lie to me. I hate my body. I feel dirty. Let me rewire this.
Yes, because so much of that, which people don't even know or understand this, is it is passed on through generations.
Absolutely.
And if it's not healed and let go of by your mom or your grandma or your great grandma, like that it gets passed on, and it does get louder and more painful until it gets to the people like you and me, and probably the people listening to this right now, that become like the light workers or the star seeds, or the people that are now meant to transmute all of these things that have been suppressed over generations. And it's just so beautiful and painful at the same time.
Oh, girl. It really is.
Wow. Okay, so it was a long road. It took years, but you were
Years.
able to become conscious of those feelings and feel them in order to let go of them.
Absolutely. That's something that boggles me about, and not boggles me because I was that person, right? But because I'm not that person now, I'm like, oh no, you gotta feel it. The only way through is through. Like, you can't go around it. You can't like dig under it. You can't climb over. Like, you gotta go through that shit. So it doesn't boggle me. I think the part that is boggling is like what I see on Instagram, and it being like instant gratification, like these 5 tips to do this. And it's like, girl, that's not going to do it for you. I'm sorry. The 5 tips for you to move past your trauma isn't it. Or like these 5 tips to like for you, because you're in skincare, like to make it's a collective of things. There's like this surfacey aspect that really blows my shit. And I know it's because I'm a 7. So 7s are like deep, like there's so much depth to 7s, and like we want to go all the way to the root of shit and rip it out at the root. And the surfacey stuff is like, it blows my shit. It really does. But at one time I was that person, so I can have an understanding, like,
Yeah, even with the skin, like skin is surface level, and there's the sayings like skin deep, but it's not skin deep. The skin is a reflection of what's going on deeper. And so, yeah, I don't like that it will sometimes appear to be this surface level type business or niche or whatever you want to call it, because the real work isn't in the topical products, or do you have a water filter? Like, yeah, that stuff matters, but it goes down to like the guilt and the shame and the hatred and everything that's suppressed, because that shows up physically. So I'm wondering, how did that manifest for you physically?
The trafficking.
The suppressed emotions.
Oh, yeah. Um, in multiple ways. I feel like, so even now, like, because I went to the hospital yesterday, like my face has been breaking out on the side for like a week. And I knew, I was like, it's something internal. It has nothing to do with what I'm doing topically, because I could eat the products that I put on my body. So I knew something was brewing. I just wasn't exactly sure. I couldn't pinpoint it yet. But oh man, I've had knee pain, I've had back pain. I feel like I've always had something going on in my womb space because of that energy that was just there. I mean, the energy of all the people that I slept with, right? The energy of me, myself being sexually assaulted, even before that as a child. I always had some issues. It was always like, oh, you have inflammation, you have a pelvic inflammatory disease, you have this going on, you have this going on. My moon cycles were unbearable for years. My skin was bad for years. I was always nauseous. I mean, there's so many things. I always had like a chest cold or some type of infection happening, and like grief lives in the lungs. So I was grieving this, version of myself that was such a just green, bubbly teenager who, got groomed. The shame, it turned into more so like I feel like growing up I had body dysmorphia, but then it turned into like a whole other thing. Like I would just like hate the way I looked, and instead of loving myself and feeding myself properly, I would do these extreme things. Like I'd be like, I'm gonna do the master cleanse, I'm gonna for 10 days drink lemon water and cayenne pepper, and I'm going to do a salt flush at the top of the day. And it's like, why the fuck would I do that to my body? Like what was I was hating myself so much that I would just torture my body, and like all these things would pop up, thyroid issues. I mean, I've had a lot of different ailments, because I say ailments because they weren't really ailments. I think they were more emotional. They were coming from, the trafficking or the lack of nurturing I got as a child. Like all these different things turned into something. So like my mom was really sick my entire life. And I remember my family telling me like, oh, your mom got sick when she got pregnant with you. So I grew up having this belief that it was my fault. So I would like lash out and do all these crazy things in high school. And they thought I was just an unbearable teenager. And it was like, no, I was a hurting teenager. I didn't understand how I could make somebody so sick. As I got into this work, like deep into the trauma work, I could pinpoint each and every one of her ailments back to her trauma. It was like, okay, her spine is turning like this because her lower body is cut off because of the sexual trauma that she, went through while she was living in her home. Oh my gosh. I mean, I could pinpoint it. When my mom had cancer, I could pinpoint it. I was like, where's the cancer? And she's like, it's in my stomach. But she was holding her large intestine. And I was like, cool, I'll be back. And like, my grandma told us this on one, I call it Family Day now. I don't call it Thanksgiving, but back then when I was calling it Thanksgiving, she had told everybody she had cancer. And while she told everybody, I was meditating and I had my first outer body experience. So when I came back to my body and she said it, everybody's crying. And I was like, well, where's the cancer? And she was like, it's in my stomach. And I was like, you're holding your large intestine though. I was like, I'll be right back. And I went up and looked up the meridians that run up the stomach and down the large intestines. And I came back and I was like, it's a submissive energy. If you get rid of the submissive energy in your life, then you can get rid of the cancer. And I mean, my family, my uncle damn near choked me. And I was like, I don't understand.
Not like me with my family.
So like, I don't understand. My grandpa was abusive to her. She carried this submissive energy her entire life. And to me, it makes sense. And I know that some people, they're like, it's not that easy. I understand that. I know there's more layers to it, but I'm gonna get to the root type of bitch. Like, where does it come from? I don't wanna treat the symptoms. I don't want to go through that. Like even with myself going to the hospital last night, I was like, all right, cool, fallopian tube. Let me look up the subconscious belief of fallopians. Let me see what I need to do. It's on my left side. Cool, that's feminine. Let me tap into my inner child and mother her some more. Like I think of it on that level. I'm never like, what's the medicine? I'll just take the medicine. No, I'll take that too if I trust it. There are some medications that I will not take. I believe in both, but I'm really heavy on let me get to the root cause. I am not a symptomatic type of bitch. Those are signs and messages to teach us what's actually happening at the root.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just signaling to us that something else needs to be looked at. It's like, I've been seeing so many different like videos, reels and TikToks of like people in their 70s and 80s in the gym and like doing physical things that I can't even do.
Girl.
That's so amazing. But then meanwhile, you go to like the store and you see people with like walkers or in those motorized chairs, or like people complaining about like they're getting knee surgery or backaches or neck problems, whatever it is. And people will be like, oh, this is what happens when you get old, or like, this is what age does to you. It's like, I don't think so. Like, I don't
No,
subscribe to that, and I don't agree.
I don't either. I'm going to live to be like 118 because my birthday is 118. So that's why I want to live to be 118. I think it's possible. And I'm not going to live to be like in a wheelchair 118. Like I want to live.
Right. Thrive.
I want to jump out of planes at like 111. Like, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't want to just survive until that age. Like, I want to actually enjoy my life and feel good in
Absolutely.
my body. And like a
Absolutely.
huge part of that is working through these emotions and expressing them and feeling them as they come up. Because if you suppress them, and you just do that day after day after day, like it builds up and you do get these problems. And then you are 80 with all of these, doctor's visits. And yeah, it's just like it is the root cause. Like it's the root cause for skin. It's the root cause for literally everything physical in your body. Comes down to these emotions and the things that you've inherited over the years. And I'm glad that you brought up the different sex partners, because sex is another way that we can take on these energies. It's a sacred energy exchange. That's what it is.
And we're not taught that.
Yeah, we're not taught that. And
Mhm.
it's actually like glamorized, and it's looked at as like this fun, cool thing to do, is have multiple partners and hook up. And it's just more and more normalized. But what that's doing to you is just like depleting your soul, for one thing. And it's also creating this false sense of self-worth that needs to be validated from the outside.
That part.
And it also is, you're taking on their emotions. So if like they have another partner and they're feeling guilt about what they're doing right now with you, you're going to take on that guilt. You're going to take on that shame. Like it's just all the emotions that are at the opposite of the spectrum that you want to be embodying, like the self-love and the self-trust. Because if you're doing these things, you don't have that self-trust. And if you can't trust yourself, you can't trust others, which means you're never going to end up in a successful, healthy relationship.
That part.
It's like, it's all intertwined.
It really is. The amount of trauma you pick up in that exchange, this is your life. I mean, for us, this is our life force energy. We could literally create anything we want from this space, and to allow somebody in, number one, is a gift, number one. To let them in though, and then take on everybody that they've slept with energetically, it's a lot. It really is. Even after my situation, I was like, cool, I'm going to go back and I'm going to go through my sacred woman journey, and I'm going to shut everything down for 80 days, and I'm going to clean this energy out. Because for me, I understand that it's energy as well. It has not that it has nothing to do medically. I'm very clear on what's happening in my body, and I know that I've picked up some energy that my body does not like, and it's time to go back to the basics and to get to the root and rip it out at the root. Energetically, I got to clean my womb space out. But yeah, me and Alaska were talking about that yesterday. I hope that you guys talk, because her with the sexual energy and sacred divine feminine, like it there's so many layers to that. Like, we weren't taught as young women that, you had a choice in saying no. Even that's small. It's not small, it's really big, but that's a small thing. And like the web of sex itself for us as young women. It's like, I was having sex because I thought I was supposed to. You know what I mean? There was never a conversation like, well, if you don't want to do it, you don't have to. And like that in itself is so deep. Allowing somebody to come into your space, but giving them consent to come into your space, like spiritually, emotionally, mentally. Like, there's so many layers to it. Yeah.
You mentioned us talking to our mutual friend Alaska about this. This is funny because you're the first person I've actually brought on, and then I've actually had like a conversation like this with. So
Okay.
it'll be cool to see how it goes over with everybody. And if they want to hear more, then we could definitely do more of this type of conversations. Before we hit record though, you mentioned that you were vegan and then now you're not vegan. Did that, I'm very into diet and nutrition with everybody. I'm always interested in what people are eating. How did that play a role in all of this?
So my body's been craving, and I'm not gonna get too deep into detail, but my body had been craving before I went to Jamaica, like fish, seafood. And I've been craving that for like 3 or 4 years now. And I've just been telling myself, no, we're not eating it. We're vegan. I'm not having it. With my mom transitioning and leaving this earth, I really sat and thought about a lot of different things. And I feel like I'm not the same person that I was a year and a half ago. And I told myself when I went to Jamaica, if I went there and they had something that I wanted to eat and that my body was like actually craving it and needed it, I was going to give it to myself. So they had like some jerk fish or something like that. And I could feel it. Like, my body was like pulling me to it. And I was like, all right, let me try it. So I ate it and I was like, yep, that's what I needed. My brain needed that. I'm going to stay here for a little bit. And I haven't gone back. I haven't said it out loud publicly or anything like that. But my body feels better. Now, I know that I also gained a lot of weight since then. And I know that some people will probably be like, oh, that's because of that. Like, no, I have some inflammation in my body. I had a stint where I took some medication and the medication blew me up as well. But I just feel better eating the way that I eat now versus how I was eating. And it took me a very, very long time to get to this point. I feel like that was also with the, controlling and some layer of hate, right, toward myself and my body. And not that vegans hate their body, that's not what I'm saying. But for me, when I control things in that way, like when I'm really, meticulous in that way, it's usually because there's an underlying issue, right? Yeah. I'm like, no, I only eat. And it's like, there's usually something else going on that I'm trying to cover or suppress by focusing on this or putting my attention on that. It's like a distraction. Was it a beautiful way to eat? Absolutely. Will I go back? Probably. Especially after this that I have going on, like I'm going to go and I'm going to be on an anti-inflammatory regimen right now. So, yeah, I feel
You're just in tune with your body.
Yeah, I feel really good right now. Yeah. And I know that I'm going to feel even better. That's what I wanted to say. So the controlling aspect. So there's this misconception that, when you're healing, that once you do something, you're done. It's like, I did it, I made it, I'm at the plateau. And it's like, even myself, I'm continuously on this healing journey. I'm never going to be done doing this work. Once we're done, you can leave this planet and go back to wherever the fuck you came from, because there's nothing else for you to do here. But I'm continuously healing my mind. I'm continuously healing my body. I'm continuously healing my soul. It's never done. So even with the veganism, right? And being so rigid and being so like strict on it, and even being like judgmental, because I was a mean vegan for a while. I was one of those nasty vegans. And like there was something underneath of that I had to uncover and begin healing, right? So the work is never done for me. It's just not, and neither is it for my clients, neither is it for any of us. So if you ever get to a space where you feel like I've plateaued, like you get something else to work on at a different level of frequency. That doesn't mean that it's daunting and we're always going to stay in this loop of trauma. That's not what it means. It means that you may have, been healing this trauma on your 4-year-old level, and you've raised up to frequency 444, and then something else happens and you get to drop back down and you get to raise back up to frequency 555. It's like this beautiful journey of evolving. And why would you want to stop that? Why would you want to, be stuck and stagnant and not continue your healing? So when I hear mentors like, I can heal you, like if it's not like an ailment or something like that, I run, because I'm like, you ain't healing me, nobody healing me. And when I'm dead, that's when that's when I return to where I came from, is when I'm healed and ready, unless it's a physical ailment like cancer or something like that. But this, mental, emotional, spiritual, self-healing journey is something that I'm going to be on for the rest of my life. And I'm all right with that.
Yeah. Only you can heal you. And it's like a never ending roller coaster.
Ever. It never ends.
Well, before I let you go, is there anything else that you want to share?
Well, you guys know I am a rebirth initiator. I empower women to, transmute their trauma into their triumph. And it doesn't come from a space of, surfacey bullshit, like I've been through it myself. And I just want to encourage you, like, if you're in a dark space, I don't want you to give up. I feel like somebody may be watching this that is like, damn, like, well, if she did that, how can I go through that? Jess is doing all of these beautiful things. Like, how am I going to get there? You will get there, but it is going to take some determination and some sacrificing on your end to really take a look at yourself and realize that everything comes back to you. Everything comes back to us. It's not saying that the trauma you went through is your fault. I'm not that bitch. I'm not that person that's going to be like, it's your responsibility, you didn't. No, but now that you have an awareness of what you're moving through, it is your responsibility to begin your healing process. Nobody is going to do that for you. And it doesn't matter how mad you are at the person that did something to you, like they're not going to help you. It's you for you. You get to go back and you get to reparent that little girl. You get to go back and you get to forgive that person that hurt you. You get to go back and you get to forgive yourself. It's really up to you. And I have goosebumps. So I know Spirit's like, yes, bitch.
Yes.
It's you.
Where can people find you?
On Instagram at Sharice Tareva. You can email me if you want to at hello@sharicetareva.com. My website is www.sharicetareva.com. I have a Twitter, but Twitter's not my thing yet. I'm just on there popping shit, like, I'm dabbing, I'm diving, but it's at Sharice Tareva. That's where you can find me.
Wonderful. I'll have all of that in the show notes as well. And thank you so much, Sharice.
Oh, this was so fun. I hope to do it again. I hope we have a part 2.
Absolutely. Let us know in the comments if you guys want a part 2.
Yes.
I'll see you soon.
I'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.
That concludes this episode. If this resonated with you, please give it a rating and review. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out on Instagram. I would love to hear from you. Links are in the show notes. I sincerely thank you for your time and your presence.